started, I would like to introduce KYZEN's Regional Manager, Eric Bromley.
Thank you, Sherry, and welcome everyone. Appreciate you taking a few minutes of your time today. What we're going to talk about is basically some indicators of when you should change out your wash bath. It's a difficult number, and they're all different with each process. As I said, each process is different. The soils and the coolant residues are quite varied. Part configurations are very different with the blind holes. 90-degree through holes can be very difficult. Fine pitch threads, the internal grooves, those can all be very difficult areas to clean, and they also can attribute to the soil loading. The substrate material itself can also be a factor. Some different metals and plastics and things of that nature can impart a lot of their material into the soil, into the wash bath, increasing the soil load. Time and temperature sensitivities is also a concern. Long process times or higher temperatures or lower temperatures can change the bath life itself. The cleaning systems themselves are quite different. This is a more of a typical open top type degreaser, a solvent degreaser. And then there's the multi-tank immersion systems that with or without agitation, and also with or without ultrasonics. There's many different variations available. And the spray and air or cabinet spray type washers. These the larger systems don't often have a rinse, but they still soil load just at a different rate. It's important to note that I took these pictures from the internet for their good representative pieces, and they don't in any way represent endorse that we use these machines over any others. Some of the different types of soils that you would typically see would be oils, grease, and coolants. Those are probably the most common from the different machining systems, processes rather. Lapping compounds, those are also very tenacious and quite varied. They can soil load the bath quite quickly with the different materials. Stamping lubes can be very tenacious to clean, and they soil load the bath rather quickly because of the high temperatures that they're required. With the process being high temperature and high pressure, they can be very difficult to clean and very difficult to get out of the bath itself. Waxes, that's another example of a difficult material to remove from the wash bath. It doesn't always solubilize very well. And if it's not caught up into some sort of filtration system, then it can load the bath relatively quickly. And you also risk redisposition. Small metal fines, also known as swarf. This comes off of machine parts, and they can float in the bath or settle in the areas down the corners of the wash bath itself, and they can also attribute to the soil load. There's some outside contaminants from the totes and the baskets used on the production floors or the travelers, where parts are moved from one station to the next, and they're not often cleaned themselves, so they can add a variety of different soils into the bath that wouldn't normally be there. Some of the visual indicators with a wash bath would, of course, be incomplete cleaning. No one wants to get to that point, but that can certainly be a good indicator. Spots or streaks on the parts is also a good indicator of your wash bath just being too heavily soil loaded. There can be not only a problem with the parts, but it can also affect the carryover into the rinses as well. An oily feel to the parts is also an indicator. Now, some companies or some processes require an RP or a CP to be added into onto the parts rather, and that's a more normal feel that you would expect. But if anything excessive to that, then that's an indication that the bath is loaded. Excessive foaming is a really good indicator, and that's an example of being that top right picture there. That can be an indicator that the wash bath has just become too soil loaded. Extreme cases, the wash bath will actually start to smell. The organics in the water will start to overtake, and some of the oils and coolants also can over time can create kind of a smell, and that's certainly not a good thing. Some of the equipment indicators with a heavily loaded bath would be the performance of the filters would start to drop rather quickly. The bag filters would plug faster than normal, and the cartridge filters would lose performance quicker than on average, and that's an indicator. The oil separation systems just can't keep up. The picture on the right is a good example of an oil separation system that is very heavily soil loaded. This one is actually mostly due to it wasn't adjusted correctly, and it was corrected, but it's just a good picture of what it can look like when it's really bad. Difficulty obtaining an accurate concentration reading, that can be another indicator that the bath has gotten so heavily loaded that the method that you've used to check concentration is not effective anymore. It actually gets thrown off, or you get a false number. And if you have any kind of auto dosing system built into your machines that dose in chemistry as needed, if that begins to drift, typically drift down, because the soil loading will actually throw off the readings and fake it out. Just a little bit about the concentration measurement methods. There are 4 main methods that are used. The first one being conductivity. The second is refractive index, titration, and then finally pH. In 2 weeks, on the 15th, one of my counterparts, Ethan Mueller, will be giving a tech-to-tech session about different manual concentration measurement methods. So I recommend that you sign in and check that out as well. For the KYZEN chemistries, we recommend the conductivity. That seems to be the most steady and the least affected by contaminants. There is one fairly simple test that is very, very accurate, and that is the non-volatile residue test, or NVR. And there are multiple steps, but I've simplified it for our talk this afternoon. And that's a sample of the current wash bath is collected and put into a dish and put on a hot plate for 4 hours. And then a similar sample of the same weight in water of virgin chemistry is done the same. And then the 2 samples are weighed, and the difference is considered the NVR, or the percent soils. We know what our percentage of NVR our KYZEN chemistries can hold. So depending on what type of chemistry you're using, you would check your manufacturer. The complete lab procedure is available on our website, so please feel free to visit and check it out. Just talk a little bit about solvent degreasers, the open top systems. They are considered a critical clean process. They are a waterless cleaning process. Mostly it's very small precision parts that have low impact requirements. They can't get knocked around. They can't be subjected to the high impact forces of a spray or even a heavy agitation, so they rely on solvency. A lot of blind holes and fine thread areas in these type parts, which really can be very, very good for the solvent degreasing. Some of these processes actually require that you dip into the boil sump, so it's very important that this bath stay clean. Some of the indicators would be, again, poor cleaning. The second one, and is probably the most common, is a boil point increase. As the solvent soil loads, it takes more energy and more heat to get to the boil point, so it's harder for the machine to keep the boil point, and it goes above it. So that's a really good indicator. Also, an extreme color change. If the bath turns very dark very quickly, that's an indicator that it's a bath, that it's soil loaded. The bath will darken with use and age, but you can tell when it's not right. And a pH level drop. There are some chemistries that are used in solvent degreasing that rely on you maintaining the proper pH level. If you don't maintain the proper pH level, part etching can affect, and also you could damage the chamber itself. Some of the corrective actions would be, of course, a complete tank change. That's what we recommend. A partial fluid change, where you would shut the machine off so it doesn't overflow into the boil, and then clean the boil tank and recharge that. That really doesn't help the long run, but it does help short term. Desiccant process to remove any water that's in the process. Some machines have this capability, some don't. And then there's a distillation to distill the fluid to remove any soluble oil. This is an example of a soil loaded solvent that was in a solvent degreaser. The customer installed the KYZEN capture onto this machine, and the capture continuously cleans and distills the solvent to keep the bath nice and pure. More information can be found on our website, or you can contact your regional KYZEN manager as well for this information. But basically, this is the same tank 24 hours later. So the capture does a really fantastic job. So in summary, when should I change out my bath? Well, when it stops cleaning. But again, that can be a timed out interval as well. If you're running the same parts in the same size baskets in the same cycle, you can count those and that can be your number. So say after 100 cycles, you need to change the bath, and that works well too. When you see excess foam, when it starts to smell bad, that's an indicator. Difficulty obtaining an accurate reading. As I said, the soil load can throw off those four basic ones. Least amount is the conductivity. The soil separation systems get overloaded. The coalescers and the skimmers just can't keep up. If the NVR test results show that it's very high loaded in soils. And finally, with the solvent, poor rinsing, the boil point increase, and or a pH drop. So that's what I have for this afternoon, and thank you for your attention, and I hand it back to Sherry.
Thank you, Eric. If you would like to discuss this topic further, please contact your local KYZEN regional manager or send an email to tech@kaizen.com, and we will have one of our cleaning experts schedule a follow-up with you as soon as possible. Again, we thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you again soon. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day.